Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the themes in chains. And there are quite a few. And also we're going to talk about some questions that you might ask yourself as you review the book and how they might be turned into writing assignments and how you might answer these if given that writing assignment in the essay portion. Remember, you have 40 minutes to write an essay, and you're likely going to see a question from chains. So theme is a unifying idea in a literary work. The themes are mentioned throughout the analysis of each chapter, but here's a summary of some of those major themes and some guiding questions. Since these are all in your resource guide, it behooves you to make sure that you are familiar with these questions, because that's where your essay questions are going to come from. The first theme that we'll talk about is coming of age and identity. These two themes work together. Isabel's story is a coming-of-age story. This is a very common theme in literature, especially literature for young adults, because you are all coming of age. And it shifts the story from innocence of childhood to the responsibility of adulthood throughout the novel. Isabel's identity is shaped throughout the course of the novel by this coming-of-age process. And she does develop a new sense of who she is by the end of this story. These are some questions you might consider. How does being taken from the Finch house change Isabella's perception of herself? How does Madame Lockton attempt to break Isabel's spirit? And is she successful? Or to what extent is she successful? What ultimately drives Isabel to seek freedom? What does Isabel's scar mean when Madame Lockton orders her branded? What does eventually come to mean, and how does Isabel reach this understanding? And what events cause Isabel to grow up? The next theme is courage. Isabel's maturing process is linked to her bravery, her courage, and her strength. While the theme should be explored mainly through Isabel, consider some of the other characters who also exhibit great courage. And this is often how themes work. It's not just a single character who develops this theme, but other characters who demonstrate courage or lack of courage. So, throughout the novel, how does Isabel respond to dangerous situations as she prepares to enter them? What experiences cause Isabel to develop greater courage? Where does her inner strength come from? What is the significance of the note Isabel burns in the fire? Think about family. Family also is a strong theme here. It's the basic sense that refers to that set of individuals related by blood or marriage or adoption. The book doesn't really address the more modern concepts of family, but you can see relationships in the story that might qualify as family, not related to blood. Here are some questions to consider regarding family. What qualities does Isabel inherit from her parents? How do these qualities empower her to protect her sister and to survive in New York? How do the families of the Finches and the Locktons differ from Isabel's family? And what does this say about the effect of slavery on parents and children? Mama is dead. Papa was sold to a different family long ago. And for most of the book, Ruth is absent after Madame Lockton sends her away. how does each of these people, how do they continue to influence Isabel even after they're gone? And what risk does Isabel take to protect her sister? How do the memories of her family affect Isabel? Freedom and liberty. The main theme of this year's pentathlon, the American Revolution, is essentially what this thematic category is about. The Patriots want their freedom from the British. On another note, though, the concepts of freedom and liberty also apply to the enslaved people in this book, and from the very beginning, Isabel seeks freedom that she was supposed to have been granted upon the death of Miss Finch. Consider these questions. What does freedom mean for Isabel? Does the word freedom mean something different to the American colonist? Is there a parallel between Isabel's quest for freedom and the Patriots' battles? What ultimately pushes Isabel to seek her freedom? Now let's consider the theme of friendship. The most important relationship here is between Isabel and Curzon. Isabel's relationship with Lady Seymour is also a form of friendship. However, it is quite different from the relationship she shares with Curzon. Friendship involves trust and loyalty, along with willingness to help each other. Use these questions to think about the friendship between Isabel and Curzon and how it changes over the course of the novel. How does Curzon prove his loyalty to Isabel throughout the book? How does knowing Curzon teach Isabel the importance of standing up for friendship, even if it means taking a risk? How does Ruth's absence enable Isabel to develop compassion for others? How would you describe Isabel's friendship with Lady Seymour? Why are they able to relate to each other so well? Slavery and dehumanization. The institution of slavery is both historical and thematic. As you read through the book, look specifically at the way each character treats enslaved people. Additionally, consider the idea of dehumanization, or treating someone as less than human. This is often a justification for enslaving people from very early times. Aristotle once argued that some people are born as slaves, and they were similar to domesticated animals, useful tools rather than human. And that was the greatly admired Aristotle. Consider these questions. Why does Pastor Weeks consider it dangerous for slaves to be able to read? How does Isabel's experience prove this statement? How do Isabel's views of slavery change from the beginning of her story to the end? And what happens to change those views? How does Isabel's struggle as a slave parallel the colony's struggle for independence? Suffering. A novel about the realities of slavery must include the theme of suffering. Isabel suffers tremendously in this book, but so do others. Think about the ways that people suffered under slavery, but don't forget to explore some of the other characters who are not enslaved. Use these questions as a guide. Change contains many graphic descriptions of human suffering. Which of these passages affects you the most, and why? What other characters besides Isabel deal with suffering? What do their experiences add to the story's portrayal of this theme? How do Isabel's coping skills with pain change over the course of the novel? What events play a role in her changing her attitude? Warfare. The nature of war is important in understanding this book. The context of the American Revolution and the primary documents and the epigraphs offer a way for you to think about this theme. And each of the chapter analyses and explanation of the purposes of the epigraphs will aid your thinking. In addition, use these questions to link the idea of warfare to Isabel. What does Isabel know about the war before she comes to New York? How does her knowledge of the conflict change throughout the book? How do Isabel and Curzon's experiences of the revolution teach readers about its events? What events in the story advance Isabel's understanding of the war for independence? Each one of those themes is developed throughout the book, and make sure that you spend some time familiarizing yourself with not only those themes, but the questions that those themes pose. Again, taking a look at the individual chapter analysis will help you understand these themes, and we'll deal with that in another one of these videos. Thank you so much for coming by.